What does it mean when several of the earliest Quran manuscripts are corrected in the very same spot? Well, welcome back to Variant Quran. This is a special day and a day that some of you have been waiting for. I am going to be showing to you a spot in multiple early Quran manuscripts at which there has been a correction. Now, what we're looking at today is one of the things that I set out to hopefully find when I began the process of casting my net wide and surveying many manuscripts for the corrections, and that is the possible emergence of some patterns and repetition in multiple manuscripts of the similar corrections or corrections of a similar passage or spot in the Quranic text. And so, as you can imagine, these things emerge over time, and in the early time of my doctoral dissertation, I had noticed that there were at least 4 different manuscripts that had corrections at this particular spot at this particular verse, and since then I've actually come across a couple others that have corrections there as well. So I don't want to belabor this. We'll jump right in and take a look at these manuscripts. BNF Arab 328. This is a manuscript written in the Hijazi style. That is one of the earliest script styles that we find Qurans written in. And this manuscript lives at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. I have reviewed it personally on 2 occasions at least, and have noted the correction at this particular spot. Now this is verse 9:109, Tauba 109, and the verse reads, and I'm reading here from the Majid Fakhri translation, is one who founds his edifice upon the fear and good pleasure of Allah better, or one who founds his edifice upon the brink of a crumbling precipice that will tumble down with him into the fire of hell. Allah does not guide the unjust people. And so in the Arabic of this verse, the portion that is overwritten in this particular manuscript is wa ridwanin khairun. So the first thing we're going to do is just look at what has been done in these various manuscripts, and then at the end I'm going to tell you what I think has happened at this particular spot. So what you see here is the words wa ridwanin and good pleasure better or. So the way that Majid Fakhri translates this has a little bit of a different word order than the way it appears in the Arabic. The way it appears in the Arabic is literally is the one who builds his edifice upon the fear from Allah and good pleasure, meaning his good pleasure, better, or the one who builds his edifice upon the brink of a crumbling precipice. Okay, so that's the word order as it appears in the Arabic, and what has happened here is the words wa ridwanin khairun has been written over in erasure. Now some of those words, part of that may have existed before, but was possibly erased, and in order to make way for the new, what was then written afterward. Now we're going to talk about the possible reasons for this, and there are various reasons, commonly known as scribal errors or causes of scribal error, and we will consider those, as I always try to do initially when I'm looking at any correction, and we're going to consider those possible reasons to rule them out and make sure that they aren't the cause of these multiple corrections in these several Quran manuscripts. Okay, so that is BNF Arab 328. This is a probably mid to late 7th century manuscript, not long after the time of Muhammad. And here is the second one, BNF Arab 330. This also is written in a form of a Hijazi script. And as you can see in this manuscript, although you can tell it's a different scribe, it's clearly a different handwriting style. And this is one of the interesting things about the Hijazi scripts. And at some point I will do a video on the different script styles to give you an introduction to, I should do that soon, to give you an introduction to what the script styles generally look like, and you can see how the evolution of the script styles progressed over time. But both of these so far that we've looked at are forms of the Hijazi script style, and as I started to mention, the Hijazi script style displays most evidently the individual personality and writing style of the scribes. So you can see this is clearly a different person, just as different people have different handwritings. The script itself wasn't quite so formalized at this stage in the process, so different people is clearly recognizable when you have a change of scribe. All right, so what you see happening here is I believe at the end of the first line of text is the erasure of something that has been overwritten, and it is the wow of the word taqwa, or fear. Then you see on the next line, you do see some shadows of what was first written, which would be out into the margin. There are a couple things going on here. I'll talk about those as we progress. But the overwritten text is the final Aleph Maksura of Taqwa, and the word Min Allah wa Ridwan, and I believe part of the word Khairun, better than. Okay, so this has been written over an erasure. It does look like the work of the original scribe to me. The writing style is similar. Maybe it's not quite as confident, but I'm not willing to say that it was not the original scribe. I think this does look like it is the work of the original scribe, and probably near the time of first production of this manuscript, although we can't be for sure on that. But the ink color and nib width and all the other factors point toward something that happened closer to the time of original production. So if we look underneath here, what we can see is that there is a shadow. Actually, that first Aleph Maksura and the word Min seems to be kind of faded. And so if you were looking at it initially, as does the wow that ends the final line, it looks a little bit faded as well. So we'd want to think about what is going on there. But underneath the word Allah here, there is a shadow of the final Aleph Maksura of Taqwa. So you can actually see quite clearly what has happened here. The final Aleph Maksura of the word Taqwa was first written right at the beginning of this line, underneath the word, where the word Allah is written at this moment. And you can see that the word Allah was initially written after that, underneath where the word Ridwan is written. So clearly this text was first written without the word Ridwan, and was read is one who founds his edifice upon the fear of Allah better, or one who founds his edifice upon the brink of a crumbling precipice. And there's no question in my mind that that's what was first written in this manuscript. All right, so the word Ridwan was left out. And then it was later erased and extended out into the margin to make room for that word. All right, let's take a look at our third example here. This is from E20, and this is in the Institute of Oriental Manuscripts in St. Petersburg, Russia. This verse has, interestingly, a correction at the very same spot. It is a little bit bunched. I am not sure that this is the original scribe who made this correction. And you can see that the text is angled to the right. Particularly the upward extenders of the text is angled to the right. There are a couple things that have happened here, but it does look like it's a different ink and possibly a different nib, and I think a different scribe who wrote this corrected portion. And also you can see it's a little bit bunched in, although not terribly so. So once again, we have the words covering the word Ridwan is written over an erasure here, and the word Min Allah. Okay, and we cannot see the word Taqwa in this case because the part of that page has been lost. But I assume that the word Taqwa existed there first. All right. So this correction has been made over an erasure, and after the fact, you can see one other thing, but it's not the focus of my attention here, is that the insertion of a red aleph here that exists as a dagger aleph in the Quranic text today. It's a little aleph that's written above the text, above the line, in order to show that this is to be pronounced as a long aleph, even though the long aleph is not explicitly written in the word. And so at some point in the development of the way that Quran manuscripts were written, alephs were inserted, and sometimes they're written in red like this, and so that would be corresponding to what we would see as a dagger aleph today. That is not the focus here. I just wanted to show you that there is a correction over this spot, including the word Ridwan. Good pleasure. Here's the third one. This is Marcel 9. It is at the National Library of Russia. Also an early manuscript. This probably is, probably early 8th century manuscript. It is a horizontal format manuscript versus the Hijazi manuscripts, which are almost always in a vertical format. And so the page dimensions changed over time. The style for producing pages changed, and so the initial pages were a vertical format, much like the format of how most books are produced today, with the page being taller than it is wide. And then at some point in time, maybe the early 8th century, they went to a horizontal, predominantly in a horizontal format, meaning they're wider than they are tall. And that is the case with this one, even though I don't show you the entire manuscript page here. All right, so once again, we see the word Ridwan being part of this erasure overwritten, and so the word Allah in this case is not, but the word Ridwan, Khairun and in this case Man is also part of it, as you can tell by the upward extending letter, which is erased under the meme of that. And also there's an aleph, the initial aleph of Asasa is written after the fact in this case too. So in each of these instances, the exact portion has not been erased, but I think the same thing has probably been happening, and that is the insertion of the word Ridwan, where it was initially omitted. You can see that the text is also a little bit bunched here as well, and so I think that's probably what happened here. All right, so those are 4 examples of correction at the same spot in the same verse, Surah 9, 109. All right, so here is just a simple side-by-side of the 4 manuscripts that we just looked at to help you visualize a little bit more clearly how they line up with one another, what corresponds between the 4. And as you can see, the exact area of correction is not identical, but they do have overlap. So the red boxes are drawn around the corrected portions. The second one down, of course, has 1 letter corrected on the, possibly corrected on the previous line. The third one down may have a correction that extends off to on the right side, but that part of the page has been lost. But what is corrected on the existing manuscripts on these lines is shown by the red square. And here you can see the common portion between all 4 of the manuscripts, and it is the letters, the word Wa Ridwan, higher in each case. Now, the other question to ask is, what would be the cause, or is this merely a scribal error in all 4 of these cases? And there are some known causes of scribal error in early manuscripts, and so we're going to take a look at those at this moment. One of the most common reasons for a mistake is called ditography or haplography. Ditography is the writing of something twice, and haplography is the omission of something and moving on to the next, to a later portion in the text when copying a text, and just continuing from there. So it causes an omission of something that ought to have been there. And both ditography and haplography are caused by something called parablepsis. Now, parablepsis is not a scribal error in itself. It is something that happens, and parablepsis means a skip of the I. So the I skips over to another portion in the text when somebody is copying. You're copying, you're writing down, and then you look away to fill the ink or some other thing, and then you look back at the text that you're copying from, and your eye falls upon the place in the text where you think you are supposed to be moving on from. Now, what would cause your eye to fall upon a place in the text that is different from the one that you're moving on from, that you are actually at? And the answer to that is something that is the same as what you just wrote. And so the common cause for parablepsis is the existence in the text that you're copying from of 2 instances of the same word or sequence of words in close proximity to each other. So let's say the word was min Allah, from Allah in this case. If that sequence of words, if Allah or min Allah occurred somewhere else in close proximity, maybe I wrote the word min Allah, I went to refill my ink, I looked back, and I saw the instance of min Allah, but it wasn't the right one. It was maybe the one earlier or the one later, and I continued writing. That would be a cause of me writing the wrong thing after that, if there was something different after those 2 instances of min Allah. So, that having been said, the first question then to ask on this page is, did the word Allah occur elsewhere on this page, or min Allah or taqwa min Allah in close proximity? And there is another instance of Allah later in this same verse, but it's preceded by wow. And so because of this, I don't think it's likely that a scribe would have confused this instance of Allah with that instance of Allah. And furthermore, that second instance of Allah is not followed by the word Ridwan. So that's a further reason to be quite certain that this is not an instance of parablepsis causing some either ditography or haplography. Okay, how about the words min Allah? Well, the word min Allah does not exist anywhere else in close proximity. The next instance is, well, it is 2 verses later in 9:111. And so if we look over at that, the word min Allah is likewise not followed by the word Ridwan. So, or wa Ridwan. So once again, we don't have anything that could account for what is happening here. And then finally, how about the words taqwa min Allah, fear of Allah? Does that occur anywhere else in proximity? And no, it does not exist anywhere else in proximity. In fact, it does not exist anywhere else in the Quran at all. And so I think we've completely ruled out the possibility of dictography or haplography due to parablepsis in this case. Now, one other thing that I would look at ordinarily if I wanted to be very thorough and look and rule out the possibility, particularly if there was a correction in a spot that looked like there was something that kind of formulaic, and there are many, the Quran is very, very repetitive, has many sort of stock phrases that get repeated again and again, is I would consider whether there is the possibility that the scribe had in mind, came upon one of those common phrases in the Quran and wrote it the way that it is elsewhere commonly written in the Quran, even though at the particular spot in question it was not supposed to be written that way. And so in order to do that, there are different ways that you would look at that, but the way that I ordinarily would look at something like that is to look at a concordance, and I would look up one of the words in it, in this case maybe the word Khairun, look it up and look at through all the instances that exist in the Quran to see where and how many places that word exists in a particular common phrase. And that could help me rule out whether it is likely or possibly a cause in a particular instance of correction. In this case, I don't think that applies because I don't see this phrase as being something that is formulaic, especially because, as I mentioned, the word taqwa min Allah does not occur elsewhere in the Quran. So that is it, but I just wanted to mention it part of what I'm doing here is teaching you, sort of enabling you to understand the craft that I've learned all these over this time and how to analyze and look at a text. Okay, so we've reviewed the 4 manuscripts that have the overlapping corrections at this particular verse. As I have mentioned previously, there are a total of, 6 manuscripts that I've come across so far that have corrections at this verse 9:109. The other ones, however, don't have corrections that overlap the 4 that I just showed you. In this case, I'm just going to show you one additional one. This is the manuscript in Berlin, and it does have correction of the 2 instances of bunyanahu, and it looks like it was probably the insertion of the long aleph in the middle there. And there is additionally, just after the word shafa, an erasure of some letter and leaving a gap. So you can see that I've placed boxes around those 3. If you look up, however, at the spot that we have just found corrected in the other manuscripts, that appears to have been written originally in this manuscript. It's a little bit hard to tell in this manuscript because it has been re-inked, and that's what you see with the darker lines over the top there. But it is still possible to see what the parts of it were original for the most part, and it doesn't look like there was anything unusual going on up there. The only other thing I will mention today is that obviously you're trying to look at other manuscripts to compare that have this verse represented in them, and I haven't reviewed all of them for this video, but I have looked at the Topkapi, in my opinion, and that of the others who have edited it, a later manuscript. So that is that. Thanks so much for watching this video today, and I hope it's interesting. There's much more, obviously, that could be said, but that is enough for now. We'll talk to you again soon, and thanks for liking and subscribing, leaving comments, and we will continue the discussion. Thank you.